Alrighty, welcome in. This is going to be the first in hopefully a series of videos talking about tabletop RPG type content. I have with me my good friend Mike. If you do not know, am Magical Hack, Damien to some. Today I wanted to talk about. Oh, no, that's the one I want to get rid of. Today I wanted to talk about some concepts and ideas for like plot hooks for TTRPGs. Some of it's going to have to do with fantasy. Some is going to be more sci-fi related. It's going to be what I don't know. I'm one of those people who thinks that you can take a plot hook, pretty much any plot hook, and shape it towards any system. I'm pretty sure you're much the same. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, for the most part, I guess just to introduce myself to your audience. So my name is Mike Ashkwy. I'm a freelance writer for Modiphius, which is the publisher for Star Trek Adventures, as well as the Fallout RPG, Dune Adventures in the Imperium, and other games like Sentience, Chung, Cthulhu, among many others. There's a lot of flexibility in a lot of plot hooks. I know certain systems tend to favor more different types of plot hooks. Like, for example, in Star Trek Adventures, one thing that you could do for an adventure is do a court case, which is not something you often see. Like, you're not going to run into, well, I guess you could. Like, you're not going to run into a court case, say, in Call of Cthulhu, though I could think of at least 3 reasons how you could make that work relatively easy. But yeah, like, there's so much flexibility in what you can do. I tend to draw a lot of my plot hooks out of characters' backstories, as long as my players at the table have done the buy-in where they give me enough material out of their backstories to do stuff. But I'm very famously an improv DM, where I'm just like, okay, I got 5 minutes, better figure something out. And 9 times out of 10, it works out pretty well, though I have gotten myself into some creative corners, we shall say.
But those creative corners are they're where the fun happens.
Yeah, like, if you're not too rigid with like things, yeah, like if you're very improv on the fly, yeah, wonderful stuff can come out of pure and utter chaos.
And that I'm much the same, like just like you. I'm pretty much by the seat of my pants. I'm just gonna give you the framework and then play with what you give me type DM. Or sorry, I prefer the term GM because DM is very specific.
Yeah, it's very, very coded to the Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Pendragon, that like sort of thing. Yeah.
Alrighty, so with introductions and the intro out of the way, like I mentioned, today we're going to be talking a little bit about plot hooks. Now, the inspiration for this, I'm going to toss that on, and actually I should also, to make it easier so that you, Senior Mike, can see what is going on.
Okay.
I am going to share my screen with be coming up.
Okay, just give me a sec to go into your server here, and where the hell is it? There we go. All right, watch stream when it loads. There we go.
Okay, so yeah. This is the specific YouTube short. It's by a creator known as Gorilla of Destiny. I should probably turn that display capture back on. There we go. Yeah, so it was something that I kind of on the offhand. I saw the thumbnail for it, and I'm like, hey, this looks interesting. And it actually gave me the inspiration for the first plot hook that I kind of outlined here. So without further ado, I'm just going to hit play on that.
Dungeon, they come across this. It's an orb that looks like it's got many different rippling waves of magic on its surface. In a nearby throne, a skeleton of a long dead wizard is sat with its skull watching this orb. By using Speak with Dead or having a look at some of the diaries and the notebooks in and around this kind of lab space, they'll find out what this orb actually is. This wizard found a way of drawing continuously from the energies of the magic field. In the beginning, to test this, he cast a single magic missile, just the standard 1d4 bolt. After a day, this split into 2 bolts. After yet another day, each of them split into another 2, and this continued. The number of magic missile bolts would be defined by this equation. So whenever we're doubling something according to t, so in this case days, the amount we have will be 2 to the power of t. Your players don't know how many days it's been since he started this experiment. The wizard started constraining these magic bolts into this sphere, to stop any accidents. Then he started watching, and these patterns that the magic was forming on this kind of constrained sphere began to mesmerize him and hypnotize him. He died watching the sphere. Now, what will your players do? I think there is a way that they might be able to figure out how to get rid of it safely, but I think they should also be given the opportunity to direct it somewhere. Make it fair, it's something they have to see. This becomes a weapon of mass destruction. A lot of enemies could be defeated by a surprise burst from this orb, but the wizard had concerns. With the constraining sphere he put on the magic missiles, eventually so much magic will be concentrated in one place that that sphere will break down, at which point the missiles will hunt for any target. He didn't know when this would happen, so I want this to be the player's dilemma. Do you get rid of one of the most powerful weapons you have, or do you keep it? Do you try and use it? And do you accept the risk that would come with this? Bear in mind that if there is time for this wizard to become a skeleton, even if it's been exacerbated, there will almost certainly be enough damage potential within this one orb to destroy everyone.
Okay, so that's first off, Mike, what do you think about that concept?
It doesn't impress me, honestly. Like, I don't mind the setup for an item that is progressively getting more and more powerful. I see that as you're asking for trouble. Depending on your group setup, first questions first, do you have a chaos goblin in your group? Who is going to inevitably muck this up? I could see this working as if you, depending on where you put this into a campaign. I wouldn't do this in the most safe and sterile environment. You could put this in a one-shot. It's not going to affect your campaign over a long period of time. It's a one-and-done item. Cool, bing, bang, whatever. There's your big, bad, evil guy for the week. In a longer-term campaign, something like this, I could see this becoming a problem, because you as the GM now have to figure out, well, who created this? What's the backstory? What are the consequences? I'm looking at this from an overview. Like, I'm looking down at this thinking, okay, where is this going to connect? How am I going to drop this in? It's a very MacGuffin-y type of kind of plot hook. Very much, if I had to put this in a different term, in a grander scale, this is the Genesis device from Star Trek. It's the right hands. And obviously you don't want that in the PC's hands if you can help it. So I'm not a huge fan of this particular setup personally. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on that.
Okay. So now that, like, for the most part, I pretty much agree with your points there. Now, what the thought process that short sparked in me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll just go kind of over the outline of where my head went with a similar concept, like with the inspiration. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty similar. It's basically a magical singularity. Okay, it is where my head went with it. So this could have been this, probably was made by someone in the past. Could have been just a random science experiment. Now, with that, the way I look at it, and one of the things in the outline that I put is, at the end of the day, does it matter who created unless they're alive. Obviously, if it's somebody who's alive, yeah, it does matter. But if it's been there for a while, will your PCs look for that information?
I would say that would very much depend on how's your game been running so far. Are you very
Yeah.
narrative driven? Do you have any things you hide Easter eggs in your lore? Would it reward a particular player if they got a really high history check or really
Yeah.
high investigation or even religion?
Yeah, well,
And
yeah, exactly. And like with that, that's one of the reasons why I kind of went that route with like the when how did it start? Does it really matter in the long run? And do your PCs care? Because like if your group it like you can be a narrative GM, but if your group isn't gonna latch on to those like plot like little nuggets of information that you're seeding in places,
Mhm.
then
It could
you
be a
know
lot
it
of work for nothing.
yeah. And like somebody like me, what I would do is because like again, like you, I prefer to like play by the seat of my pants and see what my players get up to. Um, I would essentially come up with the specifics of that when the players ask. So like basically I personally the way I would like if I was going to go with this, the way I would do it is I'd be like, okay, so it's been around for 100 years. And just create like a random name of who did it. Like who started this.
Mhm.
And then, if like say we're playing a game and you decide, "Oh, hey, I want to tug on this thread." And like I want to know who made this thing and who brought this thing into existence. I'm going to roll a history check. Or like I'm going to look through this. Oh, it's this person is like this name General Deus Machina is listed. I want to know a little bit more information about him.
Mhm.
Then I can come up with stuff on the fly. And like you being like I've run games for you before. You're an awesome player. Um, you like probably taking a couple and noting a couple of things down. That'll end up coming up, and I have a feel like I feel like I don't want to use the term good player, a more a player who's more willing to get deep into the role playing lore, because some players aren't, and that's fine.
Yeah, because
Um,
it's one of those things where people have to get comfortable to get into that immersive space. And that's almost a topic for a different podcast is how do you get your players into buy-in? Like one and because we're talking about this very much in a fantasy setting, for example, you and I have played in similar games before under different game masters.
yeah,
And without getting too much inside baseball, they never followed the lore of established worlds like your Forgotten Realms, your Eberrons, your Dragonlances, whatever. And for people to feel comfortable in that skin to role play in those established worlds, that's very intimidating. Like for example, I didn't become comfortable running D&D till a couple of years ago. And that wasn't until after I beat Baldur's Gate 3 I started looking into the history and stuff like that. So I felt more comfortable throwing in like, oh yeah, I know the Flaming Fist. I've been the Candle Keep. I know what's going on in Waterdeep. Stuff like that. So if you get players like myself, and again, this isn't just to toot my own horn here, you can really do a lot of interesting things if you're willing to throw lore and interesting backstory, but not everyone's comfortable. Like, for
yeah,
example, certain established worlds are very tricky to do and to do well. And I think that can intimidate players when it comes to developing kind of plot hooks. Because again, if you go too deep into something, you're going to lose them. Like to use an example from say a more contemporary thing like Star Trek, for example. Again, that's the IP that I write for. If I start throwing at you things like, oh yeah, this happened in season 7 of DS9 and it involved the Dominion War. You might have an idea on what I'm talking about, but if I start talking about the one of battle that totally changed the war, unless you're a total frankly fucking dork, you don't know what I'm talking about. Or in Star Wars, if I mentioned, oh yeah, this happens between episodes 3 and 4. Okay, cool. Now I've given you something. But if I go so far in that this happens between an episode 3 and 4 of Andor season 2, you don't know what I'm talking about, and you're going to lose people. So I think there's something that might be useful, like in this instance, because I'm kind of losing the plot here. But if you need to make up something on the fly, certain companies have NPC cards and background stuff you can just draw out of a deck right on the fly.
Yeah.
There's companies like Hit Point Press, which is in Canada. I think they run out of Ottawa. Ricardo and his team over there have these wonderful NPCs on the background. NPCs. They have got items that you can just draw from. And there are other companies in the space that do random generators. Hell, there's even extensions built into Chrome that can do this too, which is tremendously useful, because like being able to improv on the spot, that's a skill. And that takes time to develop. For example, you or I, we're probably taking notes as our players are playing. And we're like, okay, that's going to come up later if they choose to follow this. I better have a plan in case Bob or Tina mentions something, just in case. I better be ready for it.
Now, I kind of do that. There's honestly, and this is an under the hood thing with me, and some people like GMs like this, some people don't. It's personal preference, but I will keep, like, my memory is weird. I will remember things that my players, like, without even needing to take notes. So like I'll keep it in the back of my head, like, okay, so if, you know, and like it'll just be essentially a skeleton outline of if then statements in the back of my head. And it's like, if, you know, if Mike decides that he wants to follow this thread, I'll, you know, this is the relevant information that he's going to find. And then with that, at that point in time, I can get as in depth or vague as I need to, you know, basically role dependent. So getting back to the adventure hook. So, and like I personally think this could be used even in a sci-fi setting. You just need to change it from a magic singularity to something that some weird scientist created. But put a time limit on it. Now, with that time limit, be generous to start, but be as brutal as you are generous. And by the time I kind of expand on this, it'll hopefully make sense. So you want to start slow. So with I basically kind of wrote out a little time frame that I would use depending on group, give or take a few sessions. Have it affect locally first, and have that last no less than 5 sessions. Where, you know, you've come into an area and you're getting news that you know, in this certain area in the woods, magic doesn't work right. It seems like it's turning, seemingly it seems like it's turning into like a wild magic type area, where your spells may fizzle or may have unintended effects. Then after, like I said, after at least 5 sessions, have another 5 sessions or so where it's like a regional thing. So like, you know, maybe the north. Sorry, go ahead.
So you've now turned this, because you're talking about 5 sessions. That is a awful long time. Like, and that's if you're playing once a week. That's over a month. I might shorten this to 3. Now, if it lasts longer than that, are you turning this single plot hook into a mini campaign?
Well, like basically, this adventure hook would be for like essentially the primary hook for the campaign.
Okay, so this is a much larger thing in scope. Okay.
Yeah, so like on the local level, maybe they're hearing rumors about it.
Okay.
As it's starting to build, from traders talking about, this area in the northern country where they maybe they tried to use a fireball and uh, I'm thinking old school wand of wonders here,
Hmm.
and a bunch of butterflies popped out instead, type deal, like where it's or where they tried to they tried to use alarm, which is like a lower level spell, and it didn't work, it fizzled, type deal, like where it's magic isn't as reliable, and then have that expand a bit after a few sessions. Like if you're looking for like a shorter, like this is one of the minor plot hooks in your campaign, like say 2 or 3 sessions. But yeah, like next would be like a regional level kind of threat, where it's the northern half of the kingdom. After you get a certain distance north, it's no like it becomes like a wild magic zone, and then after a little bit further, it becomes like a truly like null magic zone.
Hmm.
Then up to a national level, and then at that point in time, like I have 5 sessions and 5 sessions listed. At this point, this would last 3 sessions,
Hmm.
where in a whole, essentially at the size of a whole nation, like your average nation for whatever world you're in, um, it becomes half of it basically is like a wild magic area, and after a certain point, you can't even use magic at all. And then it's starting to affect the entire planet. Have that be like 2 sessions, and then your last session for this whole thing is you have to deal with this, or it's the literally the end of the world.
Hmm.
Or not necessarily the end of the world, but the world is going to change drastically. Um, and the note that I have with that is, and the way I like to do it, let your players do their own thing. If they want to bite at this plot hook right off the jump, wonderful. Then you can lead them on a merry chase of how to fix it, how to maybe control it, and figure out what's the backstory of what's going on.
Hmm.
Or if they really don't care about it so much until it's at the point where it's starting to affect the entire world, and no matter where they are, their magic is kind of going haywire, there you go. If they don't want to deal with it until the very end and they just want to be murder hobos the whole time,
Hmm.
you have at that point like a hard end for the campaign, and like let your players know that there could potentially be a hard end, to the campaign where everything fails, but also that they have the freedom to do what they want. You're just going to keep the clock ticking in the back.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, that was basically all I had written out for that. But like that's the concept that I pulled from that short.
Now, there was something kind of cool because you were talking about adventure plots and or plot hooks. Now, there's something that we use in Star Trek Adventures, and it's specifically a solo RPG. Have you ever played one of these?
I have a couple that I got in a like the trans rights bundle that itch.io
Hmm.
had like years ago. But I haven't tried them yet. Like I've looked into them, and they're it's a cool concept.
So,
It definitely is.
so the reason I bring this up is one of the games that you can do is a game called Captain's Log, and it's specifically for Star Trek. You can play it across any era, but you could adapt this to other games if you want. Alien. The game has something very similar built into it. It's kind of a solo adventure sort of thing.
Okay.
But the reason I bring this up is if you're looking for an adventure hook and you are fucking stuck, there's this thing we use in Captain's Log called probability matrices. And you roll on a d20 and that'll decide what your mission type is. So I'm looking at some of these things right now. You can find this on page 257 of the Captain's Log solo RPG. And for
Okay.
example, I'm just going to read you the mission type. So for example, if you roll, and I'll just go through 1 through 20 and I'll read these as fast as I can.
Yep.
There's aid and relief, conspiracy, deep space exploration, defense, diplomacy, escort and evacuation, espionage, first contact, medical, near space exploration, patrol, planetary exploration, political, research and development, show the flag, spiritual, Starfleet JAG, so courtroom, tactical, and then if you get a 19 or 20, you roll 2 mission types. So for example, you could get aid and relief, and you could get deep space exploration. So once you get the mission type from that chart, it then goes deeper. So for example, let's say you go into diplomacy. That's the mission you get. So under that, you have attend an official event, conduct an anti-propaganda campaign, draft a peace treaty, establish trade routes, facilitate government restructuring, do a cultural exchange, and et cetera, et cetera. That's something where if you need a plot real fast and you literally don't have anything, if you've got the time to prep, roll up whatever these mission types are going to be, and then you could do something. And you could use this in a fantasy setting too, if you want, like conspiracy. Everybody loves court intrigue, but not everybody does urban city campaigns well in a fantasy setting. I find that's more... Honestly, I find most political things work more effectively in modern settings, like your Shadowruns, your Call of Cthulhu, stuff like that. Yeah, there's always court intrigue in the fantasy world, but I've honestly never played in a game where it's been run well.
Yeah, that's one of those things that is kind of hard because, like, I think part of that is a lot of people are intimidated by it. So they like, because with stuff like that, as the GM, you kind of have to go all in.
Yeah, you have to have all your ducks in a row. And if you make a mistake, your players could think, A, you're lying, so they're going to pick at a plot point that may be completely irrelevant, or B, they don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it also, like, and a lot of things that like that I think come down to the group in general.
Yeah.
Because like and it as the GM, it comes down to also kind of knowing your group and being able to at least somewhat anticipate what they kind of want.
Yeah, because like you have to learn how to read your group, and it's not unlike going on a first date. Like you're going to have to feel things out. You also have to probe, because it's something that doesn't come up as much. I mean, although it's a very important thing, is doing the session 0, finding out what your consent lines are, what are some of the triggers for your group.
Yes, 100% agree.
Yeah, because like sometimes, like some of the stuff I deal with, one rule I have at my table, flat out, no sexual violence. You can have sexuality, but it will always be a fade to black. It's not going to be anything graphic or weird.
Yeah.
Racism does exist in the world. Like you might run across a dwarf who particularly doesn't like elves or whatever, but it's always going to be playing into the stereotype, but it's never going to lean into, like, you know, the hard N word and stuff like that. And even like, and like even stuff involving kind of slavery, because that's a big fantasy trope. And you look at something like D&D setting for Dark Sun, slavery is baked right into that.
Yeah, so, that's the tricky area too, though. Like it's one of those things that like a good group will acknowledge that exists in the world and will play into it to a degree that's not problematic.
Yeah, as long as it never becomes something where it's so distracting, because like you don't want to end up on like r/RPG horror stories or end up on like D&D Doge or something like that, because there are some people who will take these things and run them into the ground, or they'll get really weird about it. So knowing your table is, I mean, more often than not, you're probably playing with your friends or people you've met through friends of friends. So you'll usually have a pretty good vibe. But I'm assuming some people out there listening, you may be a first time DM. Maybe you are running stuff at your friendly local game store. I know I am. And I've been very fortunate. I've only had one incident, and I'm not going to go into too great details. I'm not going to out this person, but I had a lot of difficulties dealing with someone, and thankfully the situation was resolved fairly peaceably. But you're not always going to get that, and there are services like startplaying.com where you can go search for games and stuff like that, and sometimes you'll meet some amazing people, and other times you won't. Other times, like I said, you'll end up on the wrong side of a horror story. But always knowing your group, what their barriers are, what they want. And it's going to be a lot of very honest and frank conversations, because frankly, we're all sitting around for 3 hours, playing grab ass with like each other and being comfortable and being vulnerable. So it's always determining, because that can shape what kind of stories that your group wants to tell. So for example, with you and your magic orb thingy, some groups may not be into that because they may not be into the investigative side of things. They may want a straight hack and slash dungeon delve, and that's fine. But you as the GM, is that the story you really want to tell? Because like, for example, I don't, it's funny. I don't like combat in a lot of games, but that's sort of my signature as a DM, is creating really interesting combat encounters. But that's probably because I have access to really cool digital tools. If I didn't, I don't know whether I'd probably do it, but it's a lot of trying to figure out like where your plot hooks are going to go. Like, because once you talk to your group, you have your session 0. You're going to have to almost play 1 or 2 sessions to get a vibe for them, to see where they go. Because I know when you and I used to play, Damien, with our other groups, our storyteller, and you'll agree with me this, I think, their stories were very unfocused, or it
Yeah.
was super clicky, where anybody who wasn't inside of the core 2 or 3 people, you don't get that involved story. And that's something else to maybe should be mentioned for kind of DMs as well, is if you don't have a good feeling about your group, if you like, this happens a lot more in LARP circles. I've noticed that if you're new to a group, it can be hard to get a story that focus, and you don't want to be the spotlight guy. You don't want main character syndrome, but it's hard to find that right balance. And like I said, you can almost compare RPG to like dating. It's very hard to find a match for you unless you know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring up LARPing, considering the history that we have in regards to that.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's one of those things that you don't want to have main character syndrome, but as a new person, you do kind of need to especially I found, like, when I was first getting into LARPing. For those of you who don't know, we at one point were part of a Vampire the Masquerade LARP in the city that we used to live in. Um, and yeah, like, that's kind of how you almost have to do it in some groups in order to get noticed. Because yeah, like, half if I didn't do half the shenanigans that I did, I wouldn't have. I would have 100% just been a background character, and it kind of depends, especially in that I know I'm doing the whole run-on sentence thing. Um, but like it kind of also with that depends on, do you want to be the background character or the background person
Yeah, because there's
that
nothing
like
wrong with being a support player. Like I know in my private D&D group, some of the people that I play with, they're learning to take more center stage, and that's just as confidence and being comfortable within that group as well. And you as the DM, that's part of your responsibility, is to constantly check in and be like, say, hey, are you doing good? Is there anything you want changed? And it's always being adaptable in that situation. So when they feel ready, you can offer them that plot hook. And if they choose to pick up on it, it then becomes the Tina show for a session or two. It gets them more comfortable, makes them feel rewarding. And the more experienced or seasoned players, like say you or I, would support this person saying, hey, you're doing really good, really glad you're having a good time. And then you as the GM, you've now given that player something they didn't have when they came in. And that's part of the thing when you're developing plot hooks. It's listening and getting the vibe of your group, seeing if you can, again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, is picking stuff out of a backstory. But if you can all find a thing that people are interested in, like for example, the classic thing that people always, in at least in fantasy games, it's always go fight the orc base or whatever reason, right? So you could drop in a random plot hook and they're like, okay, you're gonna go to fucking Isengard for whatever fucking reason. That's where you're going. And when you assault that place, maybe you find somebody in there, like a injured knight or a courtier, or I don't know, princess, prince, royalty, merchant, right? And you can give one of your players the option to rescue that person. And that almost becomes a side plot in a say, hey, we're going to bring this person back to Rivendell or some bullshit. And maybe that person is somebody of relevance, and that little side quest can become something more, because maybe one of those players who was a little bit shy but suggested, hey, why don't we rescue so-and-so and bring them home? Maybe that's a contact that develops later on. Maybe that's even a relationship that can develop kind of later on. So plot hooks, no matter how small, can turn into something major later on, which I think can be the real benefit of creating a living, breathing world
Oh,
for your
100%.
RPGs. Because like I find, yeah, like I find a lot of GMs, at least the ones that I've played with, in a more formal setting, they tend to follow adventure modules, not always super close to the letter, but I wouldn't say you're on the plot railroad and you're not getting off till you get to the certain place. They don't always account for little things like that. Now, I've been really fortunate. I've played with a couple of really amazing GMs recently who really let you run wild. And as you mentioned, Damien, earlier in this conversation, there is always a ticking clock. The world feels lived in and breathed in, but there's consequences to your actions, not always good and not always bad either. So having something in your back pocket, again, those plot hook decks can be really valuable to give you stuff. But with smaller plot hooks as part of a larger story, that can lead to some unexpectedly rewarding places. And I'm just going to give you an example out of one of my private games.
Before you get into,
yeah,
I was gonna say, before you get into that, I actually kind of wanted to just kind of add something to your whole like saving a merchant from orc camp thing. I actually had a couple of thoughts during that.
Yeah, okay.
The first one was, and this would be especially good if you're playing, say a fantasy campaign or even Shadowrun, which I wouldn't necessarily consider that fantasy, though it kind of technically is. But anyway, maybe when you're assaulting that orc camp, one of your players is a half orc, maybe one of their parents came from that camp.
Yep.
And they either know it or don't know it before they have to assault it, and put that sort of seed in to kind of take advantage of like character backstories and stuff like that. The second thing was I really love the idea of it being a merchant, because maybe that like more shy player, when they go to untie the merchant, oh hey, aren't you so and so's child? Maybe they knew one of your parents.
Yep.
And that and like this kind of for me brings up the importance of having as a player from a player perspective and as a GM perspective, with the expectation from the players of having even a basic backstory type deal, like a basic history, as it were, like, who was your mom and dad? Like, what were their first names?
You know what?
Or,
I'm really glad you mentioned that because I was talking with a screenwriter and a novelist that I happen to work with on Star Trek. And they picked up something really interesting. And I really hope your audience out there takes this to heart. And it's 5 simple questions that'll help you become such a better role player. And here they are. Write 5 important concepts that are developmental and or integral to your character. This can be personality, impactful life events, physical characteristics, sentimental items, etc. 4, write up to 4 goals you'd like to see throughout the campaign. Please include a mix of character-driven and player-driven goals. 3, create 3 NPCs that are important to your character. 2 must be friendly and familiar to your character. The other one should be adversarial. 2, create 2 secrets for your character. What is the secret that your character knows? The others involve them, but they're unaware of it. Number 1, develop 1 reason why you're going on this adventure. This is what connects you to other characters and acts as an investment towards the completion of the story. Because one thing that I learned very early on in my roleplay journey is backstories. They're either 30-page novels of emo-driven bullshit, or they are so ludicrously boring as to whatever. And I'll give you an example of this. I am going out to find my fortune. Okay, why? Money is the most boring motivator in the world. Now, add on to that. I'm going out to find my fortune. I need to become rich because my family's sick. I'm dying. I need to find a way to pay for my treatment. I'm sending money home to my village. That's an investment. And that's not like I want to become rich because I want to own a house. Okay, why? Where did you come from? Right? There's always something more important to that.
yeah,
So
I
developing the
100
backstory is important.
I agree with that. And sorry for jumping in,
No, it's fine.
but like with looking at it, even if your character's like raison d'etre is greed, okay, so it's just greed, pure greed. Okay, now at me as a GM, how I would look at that, if that's how they want to run their character and that's the motivation they choose, what I would do with that is at some point in the campaign, give them that moral dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
Is your greed more important than the lives of your loved one? Or like put that, and like this would be good for like a longer term campaign where,
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of a 20 level campaign in 5th edition or 2024, there's not a lot that you can do to physically threaten the PCs. By that point, they have so many different ways out of potential harm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like, is your greed, like, put your greed and your wealth and your money on the scales versus, the safety of your parents, the safety of your first love, you know, maybe the sake of the kingdom that has recently granted you the land that you're using to store your vast hoard of gold, like some, wannabe dragon. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And
Like,
this might be an interesting point too, if you were going to pursue this path. Now, I'm not one to alignment police you, but this could, depending on how you as a game master and your particular game system, this might indicate a moral shift as well. Because if your goal is to accumulate wealth, because there's such a thing as a beneficial or a nice billionaire, there's not.
no.
and you decide to sell your country, or if you decide to sacrifice something for more money, that's another plot hook in and of itself. Let's say, Damien, going along with like your example, you sell out your parents and you get a whole shit ton of money. Cool. I can think of two examples, one from fantasy, one from cyberpunk, where this might be an interesting plot hook. Fantasy. Suddenly you're on the Nine Hells radar, and Zariel has an interesting offer for you. You just opened up a new way to become a warlock. That's an interesting character-driven moment, right? So that's something like, hey, would you like a level in warlock? Just sign right here. Alternatively, let's put this in the cyberpunk. We've mentioned Shadowrun before. You just sold out your entire town to give us environmental rights to do testing here as the Renraku Corporation. Well, how would you like access to some of our more interesting tech? All you have to do is sign here. Again, now you've just become a corporate asset. And because you have now signed over, they're going to promise you more money. But what you don't know is that they own you because you signed on the dotted line. So there's so many interesting ways for you to take someone's simple, almost lack of caring for their background. You could spin that into so many more interesting plot hooks if they're willing to pick up on it. And because I'm not saying it as a way to punish a player, but that will ripple throughout the rest of the group. Like, again, going back to the fantasy setting, if you have a paladin of Tyr and I don't know, some fucking cleric of whatever saying, hey, you just signed a contract with the devil. We're not cool with you right now. What are we going to do about this? Again, that's inter-party conflict, and it doesn't have to result in PvP. That's interesting role play depending on how the person decides to pursue it. Because again, now they gave you a boring backstory, but now you've added the Colonel's Secret 11 recipe bullshit to it, and now they got some amazing fried chicken. What are they going to do with it, right? So there's so many ways to expand upon that, and hopefully your player sees that as being rewarding, saying, hey, I had something kind of boring, now it's kind of cool, and you can work with that.
Yeah. Actually, that example that you brought up, essentially in one of the past campaigns we had on the podcast, Daniel's Red Tales, that was basically something that I was in the middle of because we were playing Monster of the Week.
Mm-hmm.
And I made my character as essentially I used the magic user playbook and I kind of leaned right into it. And like went with like summoning magic and stuff like that and had a good old time and made the storyteller's hair probably thin a little bit because, you know, if I have access to magic, I'm a push those limits. But in and amongst that, my character made a choice to essentially sacrifice one of the people who is trying to kill us to summon something into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of let go in the moment. But later on, we had like a few sessions later, we had a session where it all ended up coming to a head, and me and one of the other PCs who was playing the Dispossessed or Displaced. It's one of the like extra playbooks for it where you're basically sucked from the past. Or possibly the future. I didn't really read the playbook too much, but basically you're isekai'd from a different point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was playing I don't know as he was playing as somebody who was posing as the historical figure Roland. And like he was like the character was very devout Middle Ages Christian. You know, magic is sin and it was like he was very like he played into that, like the player played into that fucking beautifully. And I was playing like I know magic and your religion doesn't really mean much to me. And like we butted heads and it came close to PvP on numerous times, but the other player and I kind of backed it down just before it got to that point. And it led to such amazing role in my opinion.
Oh yeah, like one thing that we had in one of our games, this began as a complete side quest. Like, for example, just to give a little bit of context, I'm Indigenous Canadian. I'm Ojibwe, and I'm very leaning heavily into my spiritual roots and beliefs. So at this one point in our campaign, we're up in the far north. This is in Faerun, Forgotten Realms. And these frost giants were using winter wolves as attackers, and they were trying to isolate this area. And I saw one of the winter wolves being abused, and I was like, "You're gonna stop that." And my GM's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Just follow me." And my GM and I said, "I challenge for his freedom." And they're like, "Oh, Mike, you can't take on this winter wolf." You like, I was a level 4 or 5 character, so I shouldn't have been able to take this guy on. But I'm thinking, no, 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 I'm doing this. That you're not going to abuse an animal on my watch. Fuck you. So, long story short, I transformed into a rocktopus and I choked his ass out because 15 feet of attack movement certainly beats your 5 foot of bite range. So
Yeah.
it was a good time. So my DM's like, okay, now you have this extra character. So what are we going to do with it? So what happened is over the course of the next couple levels, me and that winter wolf became bonded as friends. My character is a druid, and I'm like, you deserve your freedom. This is your life. And because my DM picked up on what I was laying down, he's like, your winter wolf is now choosing to see you as his pack mate. And eventually now we're at level 7 coming on to level 8. So for the last 3 or 4 levels, we've been developing a friendship and a bond. And now that has developed my role play. My character was originally a druid bard, but eventually I became a druid ranger because I just wasn't feeling it. But now when my subclass comes up for my ranger, which will be my next level, I will become a beastmaster so I can bond spiritually. So this creature, this winter wolf, can never disappear. Yeah, there's some homebrew shenanigans in here, but the important thing is that we turned what I decided to be the Chaos Goblin in that moment, because this should have just been a one and done fight, kick the crap out of a couple of winter wolves. This should have been like the fight of the night. Instead, I derailed it in about 20 minutes. But now I have this awesome plot hook, and now we have an extra character on the board for us to play with. And now that character began as Winter Wolf A has now become Myingen, my compatriot in fur. Basically, he's a winter wolf, and I wild shape into a wolf all the time. So sometimes
Awesome.
yeah, it's fucking so cool. And there's so many interesting things that can come out of little side quests that you don't necessarily expect. Like in our game, we have this detective story we've been following on the side, and it involves us calling home to our home base and stuff like that. And one thing that could also be used as a plot hook, and this is depending on the game, obviously, depending on your type of character. I'm a pretty big military buff, and I've got friends of mine that are ex-military or paramilitary, and I'll talk to them. And one of our groups, we play as part of a mercenary unit. And sometimes being the big damn hero doesn't make any logical sense. Like, you're not going to charge into, again, let's go back to that orc encampment. 4 guys are not going to take on 400. That's just not going to happen. But that doesn't mean you couldn't do other things to gain information, intelligence, scouting. And that can change the tone of your games too. Because again, one thing I've noticed, and maybe you've seen this like kind of too, Damien, is everybody assumes there's a monster there, kill it. Not every creature's going to fight to the death. There's morale checks. Like, again, like, for example, to use, again, going back to fantasy, kobolds and goblins, one-on-one, they're fucking 1-2 hits, they're dead. You get those guys in numbers, they're going to start to fight a lot smarter. They're going to start to use murder holes. They're going to start to use traps. They're going to use bolos. They're going to use things to trip you up. And suddenly, those 6 kobolds, they're a lot more fucking trouble than what you previously kind of thought on. And that can change the direction of your campaign. Again, there's a plot hook. Those scouts just fucking ran from you. What if they get back to base and start reporting, oh yeah, there's all these mercenaries in our backyard. We need to triple patrols around the perimeter. And now you've created a complication. Now you've either fucked up your story or you've made it a lot more interesting. Are you going to go in Rambo, or are you going to be more Mission Impossible and sneak in?
Oh yeah, like I have completely locked down I think it was a level 10 party. Using 6 goblins it was kobolds, and I gave I think 3 of them beads of force.
Yep.
Now it's slightly homebrew because it doesn't say in the rules that you can use a bead of force as sling ammunition.
Oh, that's clever.
Come on,
makes sense to me.
Exactly. It makes sense. If you can throw it, you can huck it from a sling. And yeah, like I locked down 2 of the strongest PCs due to a failed save from the bead of force. They were stuck in the bubble. And that you're kind of there until you break out yourself and make the save or make the check, because I think it's a strength check. Or until the time runs out on it.
Yeah, like, and it's not just martial abilities that we're like kind of talking about here, because like we've talked an awful lot about combat. Social encounters can really turn sideways on you, especially if you're like me and Damien, you're an improver. You think fast on your feet. You can turn situations into your player's advantage or disadvantage just by listening to them. But that's also something to kind of note too. Not everybody's comfortable talking. Like, for example, in my games, I have the hard and fast rule. I'm a little flexible with it, but if you're going to bargain, you're not just rolling for that. I want you to convince me. Now, you can augment your attempt to persuade me with a roll, but really try and get me to buy your bullshit. Or if you're going to lie, like one thing I did last game is like, okay, guys, I want to make this interesting. You have blackmail on that guard. I'm going to take my cans off and go to the bathroom. I'll come back in 10 minutes. I don't know what you're going to say to me. So when we got into the situation where they had to break into this casino, they start dropping it on me. And I'm thinking, is that your blackmail? They're like, yes. I'm thinking, oh, well, shit, I don't know how to respond to this. So in the moment, I'm on my back foot, and those guys felt really powerful. And that's something else. Like, you can have unpredictable elements in your game. They won't completely derail things. More often than not, your players don't want to, you're not going to hand them a sphere of annihilation and give it to the king in like a piece of cake. You're not going to do that. Though with your magic orb of death, you probably could.
Now, to be fair, that wasn't my magical orb of death.
But
I was actually thinking the other, like in the other direction, where it's not going to explode and kill people, but maybe it's going to strip the world you live in of magic.
Yeah, but like it could be like a Netherese object, or to put it in Star Trek, it's a singularity that seems to be it's the fucking thing from All Good Things, right? There's so many interesting ways you can take this thing. And again, social encounters are something that should never be discounted. Some groups really like leaning into the heavy role play, and you can have entire sessions where nobody rolls initiative. But you have to be careful with that, because sometimes people don't like, hey, where's all this talky shit? I came here to punch Conan the Barbarian in his dick. But sometimes social encounters can really change the direction of your campaign. because that's you as the GM. Now you're keeping track of all these NPCs and game master characters, and your players are like, okay, I want to try and get this information. I want to try and get myself this advantage. And you can have depending on how your group reacts, you could have a really good night of intrigue or stuff like this. One fun thing I like to do is to throw them into masquerade balls or stuff like that. I mean, in my one Star Trek game, I don't know when this is going to air, we're doing a Starfleet gala before they go off into this new realm of space, and all these companies are competing for a construction contract.
Ooh,
So
fun.
yeah, it's really neat because the way my game is set up, it's just post the Dominion War, and there's a peace treaty with the Federation and the Dominion. The Dominion has sent a delegation saying, "Hey, we'd like to help you. Will you trust us enough to go into this area with you?" And what they don't know is I'm throwing in a bunch of red herrings, but now it's interesting, right? So now there's so many interesting things you could do. Hell, to talk about a plot hook, and I just thought about this right now. There's a video that I just watched from a channel called Lore Reloaded. Guy's wonderful on YouTube. YouTube, love him. But he talked about how in Star Trek, the transporter and the replicator and the holodeck all work upon the same principles. So he made the very valid claim that since the transporter can recreate you from going point A to point B, the holodeck does the exact same thing. So I had it, what if the ship just created somebody? It just made it, the ship had a dream and it made something real. So what I'm going to drop on them as of this recording tomorrow is that person's now going to claim asylum. Where does he have rights? Is he a Federation citizen? Is he property? Just because he's breathing, is he property? And what if he claims asylum on that ship and the Federation's, well, no, we want to study you. You're coming back with us to the Daystrom Institute. No, I'm not. So now you've got a court case.
That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, and I was like,
my second thing I have with that is that sounds eerily similar to something that happened in Voyager.
Tuvix is a very famous example of this. William Riker, who was the clone of William Riker after he got transported and there was a reflection beam or whatever, also came up in Lower Decks. Like there's so many interesting things you can do. And even with the Doctor in the episode Author fighting for holographic rights.
Yeah.
And hell, again, that's an adventure hook. If you did a court case, what if someone brings you in and, okay, you're guilty, prove you're innocent. It also depends, where's this court case taking place? For example, let's say you get pulled into some kingdom, right? You are guilty until proven innocent, not the other way around. Or it's a populist society. You're guilty until you confess. What do you do with that, right? So you can add, I'm not saying everything's going to be like a Dick Wolf or Boston Legal level of intrigue, but that's a different change of pace from your average sword, sorcery, or phasers.
100%. And as well, I just wanted to say one more thing with that.
Of course. Yes.
You shouldn't at the same time, like, I 100% agree, social encounters and social sessions should be something that happen regularly. But at the same time, if you notice that, say half your players aren't engaging,
then yes,
maybe they're not in the mood for a social, like a strict RP session. Don't be afraid to pivot to light combat.
Or give them something different. I mean, if they're not into the social thing, you could, if you want to stick with, like, say, the court case, have these guys go out and look for evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there's so much, and again, if they have to do combat, I'm going to intimidate you, Mr. Goblin. I'm going to beat the crap out of you until you give up what's in that bag.
Exactly.
Sort of things like that, yeah.
Or maybe I am the type of person that I'll come up with a plot hook on the spot for something, or like a reasoning on the spot for it. Maybe another kingdom felt this was the perfect time to take out the judge that's presiding over the case.
Yeah, like it could be a complete show trial where you're just there until they say, "Well, that was enough out of you. We've got what we needed. We're going to kill you now."
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
there's so many interesting ways you can take so many directions. I mean, one of the channels that I recommend people watch to get ideas from because it really helps me is the Dungeon Dudes is a channel I highly recommend
I like
if you're
them. Yeah.
if you're doing more fantasy type stuff, and this is more something to plan your encounters, but it can lead you down some interesting plot hooks. There's a channel called, I think his name is Mr. Rex,
Yeah.
REXX, I think, and he does lore videos about monsters. So let's say your group is hunting I don't know, a manticore. Okay, so your plot hook is you're going to hunt a manticore. But what about its environment? Where does it hunt? What does it like? What are its social behaviors? So you can pull out so many interesting things from that just from kill this monster, but now there's more. What if that manticore is trying to protect a family unit? What if someone was turned into this manticore? It's not behaving like it should. Like,
Yeah.
okay, why is it only eating vegetables? I thought this thing was a meat eater. So again,
Or
yeah.
or as an option, what if manticores aren't, natural to the world that you're in? Like I like to make my own worlds. I generally don't run in established worlds because I like to make my own story.
Mhm.
And like, what if in your world a manticore is basically another form of chimera, where it was made by somebody long ago, and they're rare, but they're rare enough that you don't necessarily have any information about them. So you have to learn about the manticore at like your PCs have to learn about the manticore as they're figuring out how to deal with it. And it becomes okay. They have to find an ancient lab that is near where the manticore was last spotted. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like in that lab, it's gonna give them maybe there's a specific toxin that was made that your characters can grab that the characters can grab as kind of like a little MacGuffin that will make the fight easier for them if they choose to pull on that thread, as it were.
Mhm. Yeah, like there's so many cool things you can do. And I invite people to do. Like just be adventurous, but know your limits too. Because like not ever like one of the worst things I've seen happen in the last 5 years in this hobby, and I'm not saying a lot of people do this, but it's enough that it gets talked about, is the Matt Mercer syndrome. And long story short, not everybody's expecting you to be this master level storyteller. We're not all expecting you to be Brendan Lee Morgan or the guy from D&D Shorts. We're not all expecting these grand campaigns. You're not running Dungeons of Drakkenheim unless you are. But tell a story that engages you as a game master, storyteller, dungeon master, whatever. And as a player, be my best piece of advice I can ever give anybody is be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because if you're willing to let go of, not say pride, but afraid to look silly, and if you're worried about being, Sturm Brightblade from Dragonlance or whatever, I'm not saying you have to fully commit to the bit and talk in a Scottish accent or anything, but you're with your friends more often than not. You're in a comfortable and safe environment. You can have a lot more fun if you're just willing to loosen the reins up a little bit. Encourage your game master, but be kind to yourself as well. Like one thing, I mean, to this is something, Damien, that's going to catch you by surprise. I was very uncomfortable playing with your group when we played BattleTech. And it's only because I didn't know a lot of people, but I knew you. So I was willing to commit to the bit when I could. But when I saw the other players trying to encourage me, I was like, okay, I can pick up on this thread. I don't know them well enough by name enough, but I can see they're trying to throw me a lifeline. I can work with this. And we got a really, however long that game ran for, like 3 or 4 months, we had a really, really good time, but I was out of my depth and out of my element, but I never felt scared. And that's a rare thing to find these days. I find role play stuff, some people get intimidated and once they have one bad experience, they don't go back. With your group, you managed it very, very, very well, where I felt like a newcomer coming into this space could feel fairly comfortable. And because I was so new to Battletech, I hadn't played since high school. I felt that comfort. So I consider that a pretty big feather in your DM hat.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're getting to the point where you have your heart out, Monsieur. So I think like we've gone through a lot of stuff. We've been talking for about an hour now, a little bit over.
Mm-hmm.
I first off, I want to thank you for hanging out with me and chatting with me about this. It is I as one of my oldest friends at this point, and one of the people that whose views I appreciate some of the most in this space. Mainly because of our history together in regards to role playing and stuff like that. I like I said, I definitely appreciate you coming and hanging out and chatting with me about this.
Of course.
Is there anything you would like to plug for yourself, Monsieur?
Yeah, sure. If you always want to find me, I'm always available at thisweekingeek.net. That's the podcast that I've produced weekly since 2007. Me and Alex will be coming back for our fall season. A lot of big stuff coming up as a lot of the major games are getting released. Plus, I have a whole whack of Transformers to talk about from Hasbro. They just sent me a box. I also have a Patreon. It is currently free to sign up for. If you choose to support me, great. I'm just not great at updating, but when I do, I try to do my very best. So that is patreon.com/birdmandodd, or look for Fox's World of Adventure. Lastly, when it comes to buying my books, if you go to the Modifius website, I wrote for the Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition Core Rulebook. And you can find most of my sidebars in there. And beyond that, keep your eye out on modifius.com for future announcements. If I have anything to announce and any other projects I'm involved in, I will be talking about that in social media. You can also find me on Blue Sky, where I go under the name Birdman Guelph, because that's where I most often do all my advocacy and whatnot. And I'm sure you'll see me in the newspaper or some local media being pissed off about something. So that's where you can find me most times.
Awesome. And I will be putting links for all that stuff in the description, so that you can find this awesome individual. And as well, a lot of you watching that have been around here regularly, I can be found on Twitch at twitch.tv/magicalhack. I'm also part of the Daniel's Dread Tales podcast. We are a actual play podcast. We've done a few different campaigns, a bunch of one-shots. You can find us where you catch your podcasts. We also have a website which has our feed up on it. And also, obviously, here, if you liked the content that you had just seen, definitely like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It helps out. It helps get this content out to other like-minded. Once again, thank you very much for coming and hanging out, Mike, and everybody watching out there. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day. Cheers.